just wait for those with the very pickiest bladders to retake their seats. Now we come on to the, well, I hesitate to use the word formalities evening, but at least semi-formal part of the evening, and that's the various speeches and toasts. First of all, it's my very great pleasure to introduce, to those of you who don't know him, but I'm sure 99% of you already do, Mr. John Carleton, who on his retirement in 1998 was second best at Elstree, but had joined the school in 1960, and without stealing any of his thunder, I'm sure it's fair to say that he played a pivotal role in the move from Hampstead to Elstree itself. So would you join me please in welcoming to propose the toast to the Worshipful Company of Haberdashers, the school governors and the school, Mr. John Carleton.
Mr. President, Masters of the Haberdashers Company, members of the Old Haberdashers Association, Mrs. Taylor, honoured guests. It's both a privilege and a pleasure to have been asked to say a few words about the events of 1961. But for a schoolmaster, old habits die hard, and I would like to start by asking a question. How many of you were pupils in the school in the period 1960 to 1962? Thank you. I better be extremely careful. Dr. Taylor was appointed to the headship of the Haberdashers Hampstead School in the summer term of 1946, then 38 years old. A first-class academic with an incisive mind and abilities for understanding people and for strategic planning. Gifts which he brought to bear for the benefit of the pupils and the school. During the extended interview process through which he had to go, he had already decided that he offered the post to remove the school to a new site with better facilities. In May 1958, the school governors learned that Aldenham House, and part of its estate, was soon to be for sale, having been alerted by W.R. Clemens, an old haberdasher from the Hoxton School. You can always rely on old haberdashers to keep their eyes and ears open. The headmaster, governing body, and the Haberdashers Company were in agreement that this was the right site, and 61 acres were purchased. The foundation stone was laid at Elstree in October 1958, with the move planned for September 1961. Inevitably, the budget was tight. The premises in Westmere Road had to be sold to the London County Council for use as a school. Not, as would be the case these days, for, shall we say, development. There was not much money there. There would not be enough money to have a dining hall. The prep and the junior school were going to have to share very cramped facilities in what had been the BBC block. Academic departments and housemasters would be shoehorned in to minuscule offices with little or no privacy for interviews. Classrooms and practical rooms would be economically sized. Were there corners to cut? Yes. But Dr. Taylor was a master of getting on with the job. The classicist and master strategist knew that men, not walls, make the city, and this was not an opportunity to be missed. We had to move. Niceties would be added later. Now, most of us in this room have moved house at some stage, but how do you move a school? In our case, we did much of it ourselves. In the summer term of 1961, after the exams were over, senior pupils and members of staff packed books, paper, art and craft materials, even glassware and chemicals, I won't mention the type, into crates. Finally, we dismantled the laboratory benches, including plumbing and wiring. Everything was packed onto the back of an open 3-ton lorry. We sat on the top of the boxes and were driven out to Elstree. When the lorry had been emptied, we went back to the next group. This took many days, even with final help from a fleet of removal vans of the really heavy items. A black sign for Health and Safety at Work Act was not even a discipline lead in a bureaucrat's eye. Fortunately, there were no accidents. Not only did these activities save money, but the pupils and staff working together in this joint venture derived pleasure and a real sense of satisfaction that their efforts were helping to create their new home. How did we travel to the school on a normal day? Along with everything else, Dr. Taylor had planned for this by appointing John Rolfe, one of our geography masters, as transport officer. A superb organizer, John arranged for a small number of coaches serving 4 pickup points at railhead to operate the shuttle service to the school, stopping outside the main gates in the road both morning and evening. An off-the-road coach service, much safer, would have to wait for some little while. The local roads, Little Morgan Country Lanes in 61, were so quiet and peaceful that about 100 boys and staff cycled to school each day. A rural dream, you might think, but what a reality. I well remember a chemistry colleague arriving at school one very wet morning with dripping cycle cake, emptying water from his shoes and socks, and drying them in a laboratory oven before he was in a fit state to attend his first class. As the hall had not been finished, the ever-pragmatic Dr. Taylor conducted morning assembly in the playground using a handheld electronic loudhailer. Then the sports staff followed, barking their notices as from the touchline. Science and craft subjects have their own dedicated classrooms, but most other subjects were taught to the younger boys in 12 general purpose classrooms built in a horseshoe around the cloakrooms and kitchen. The rooms were designed in 6 pairs with large sliding doors between each pair to enable them to be opened to form an area for house assemblies. However, the doors were not very soundproof, so boys sitting at the back of one room could listen to their own lesson and the one in the next room simultaneously. At lunchtime, the sliding doors were again opened and the rooms were used as dining rooms, one for each of the 6 houses. The catering staff wheeled in heated trolleys and and served lunch to the boys. But house prefects had to clean up and rearrange the rooms ready for afternoon lessons. However, teaching usually took place with the aroma of cooking lingering in the air and pieces of squashed vegetable on the floor. Aldenham House became the administration centre for the school and also home to the 70 or so pupils who boarded on a weekly or termly basis. Another very good example of Tom's forward planning. At first, there was no headmaster's house, but when one was built, it was used extensively to entertain school guests, and also after an evening performance of a play or concert, to entertain those who had taken part, together with parents and supporters. Margaret and Tom also regularly entertained members of staff and their partners, helping develop a sense of the school as a family to which we all belong. There were gains, but were there losses? Yes, but they were temporary, albeit for 20 years in the case of the dining room. The staff had gained offices in house areas, even if crowded, but this had a downside. Social contact was becoming reduced, with masters becoming isolated in their separate departments. What to do? set up committee. Timetable staff meetings. That wasn't Dr. Taylor's style. The master strategist had a different solution. He made a present of a billiard table to the master's common room, which soon became the place of choice to relax, share ideas, and discuss all manner of topics, thus becoming the hub of the family home, strengthening the community feeling, as well as being the face of business. Should we have moved? Definitely. The move was exciting, gave room for the school to develop, including being joined by our sister school, all in an idyllic setting, in ways which would not have been possible at Hampstead. Some years later, I was showing a group of visiting headmasters around the campus, and one asked, "John, how much do you pay the governors for being permitted to work here?" In the 7th century, Robert Aske, whose portrait hangs over there, was our family. Many of us believe that Dr. Tom Taylor, whose foresight and energy working with the governors and the Haberdashers Company moved us to Elstree in 1961 and thus became a second family. Development continues thanks to lively students, caring parents, inspirational staff, and a dedicated governing body, all backed by the Haberdashers Company. Please be upstanding for the toast. The Worshipful Company of Haberdashers, the school governors, and the school.
Something in absolutely that every single one of us can recognise and link ourselves to, and the wider OHA. Seriously, thank you very much.